Puta madre, oh shit! Fuck me! Fuck! Oh shit! Fuck me! Fuck me! Oh shit! No. Cuidado con el tanque.
¡Sácalo, güey! ¡Vamos a jalarlo, güey! ¡Ven, vamos a jalarlo! ¡Vamos a jalarlo, vamos a jalarlo!
¡Rápido, rápido, rápido, rápido! Oh man! Fuck!
December 21st, 2025 brought a red Ferrari screaming out of a tunnel on Angeles Crest Highway in the San Gabriel Mountains north of Los Angeles. And what happened in the next few seconds would kill one of the most influential figures in gaming history. Vince Zampella, the 55-year-old co-creator of Call of Duty and head of Respawn Entertainment, was driving a 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS southbound when the vehicle veered off the road, slammed into a concrete barrier, and erupted into flames that trapped him inside the burning wreckage. A passenger was ejected on impact and later died at a hospital, their identity still not released to the public as of December 23rd. TMZ obtained video footage showing the entire crash, and what you see is a sports car capable of 819-plus horsepower losing control at what appears to be extremely high speed, witnesses rushing toward the mangled wreck screaming as a fireball shoots into the air. California Highway Patrol is investigating what caused Zampella to lose control on that winding mountain road, and the gaming world is trying to process how the man behind some of the most successful franchises in history is just gone. Vincent Walter Zampella II entered the world on October 1st, 1970, and nobody would have predicted that a kid who'd eventually fail out of Broward College in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, would go on to revolutionize the first-person shooter genre 3 separate times in his career. After that unsuccessful enrollment at Broward, Zampella worked as a handyman fixing things for people until a friend helped him get a job at a local game company, where he answered phones and tested game releases. The kind of entry-level work that most people see as temporary, but Zampella recognized as an opportunity. A 1997 interview with GameZilla captured him explaining that he started out in graphic design and digital video at GameTech, then moved to Atari sometime before 1997 to help launch their PC division, building skills while bouncing between companies trying to find where he fit. Panasonic Interactive Media and Ripcord Games came next, then Segasoft, where he met Jason West around the mid-1990s, and that partnership would eventually change gaming forever. September 1999 saw Zampella move from Silicon Valley to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to work for 2015 Inc. And by 2001, he'd become director of development at that same company. The kind of steady climb that showed he knew how to do the work and earn promotions. 2002 brought Medal of Honor, Allied Assault, a World War II first-person shooter that Zampella and Jason West designed together for 2015 Inc. and Electronic Arts, and Steven Spielberg counted himself among the co-writers on the project. The game drew heavy inspiration from Saving Private Ryan, creating cinematic military action that felt more intense and immersive than anything players had experienced before. And critics praised it as one of the best shooters of its generation, while it went on to inspire Medal of Honor, Frontline, which debuted later that same year. Allied Assault's success convinced Zampella, West, and a guy named Grant Collier that they should start their own studio staffed entirely by members of the Allied Assault team. And Infinity Ward came into existence in 2002 with a vision for what military shooters could become. Electronic Arts decided to move Medal of Honor development in-house shortly after Infinity Ward's creation, which opened the door for Activision to swoop in with a deal to create what they internally called MOH Killer, a game designed specifically to compete with and surpass Medal of Honor. Section 2. The birth of Call of Duty. 2003 brought Call of Duty into the world, and Activision acquired Infinity Ward shortly after the game's release because they recognized they'd just published something that would print money for decades to come. The original Call of Duty took everything that made Medal of Honor, Allied Assault work, and expanded it, putting players in the boots of soldiers fighting across multiple campaigns in World War II, switching between American, British, and Soviet perspectives that showed the global scale of the war in ways that felt personal and immediate. Scripted sequences that felt like you were living through a war movie, intense firefights where you fought alongside AI squadmates who actually felt like real soldiers covering your advance, and level design that guided you through historically inspired battles without ever making you feel like you were on rails. Zampella and West signed long-term employment contracts with Activision as part of the acquisition, locking themselves into what would become a complicated relationship with the publisher that would eventually end in lawsuits and severed ties. Call of Duty 2 followed in 2005, refining the formula and establishing the franchise as the dominant military shooter on consoles. And then 2007 brought the game that would change everything: Call of Duty 4. Modern Warfare abandoned World War II entirely and dropped players into contemporary conflicts in the Middle East and Russia, introducing the world to characters like Captain Price and Soap McTavish in a campaign that felt ripped from current headlines. Multiplayer became the reason people bought the game, with progression systems that rewarded players with new weapons and perks, killstreak rewards that let you call in airstrikes and helicopters, and maps designed for fast-paced action that made every match feel intense. The game sold over 13 million copies and fundamentally changed how people thought about first-person shooters, codifying a template that the entire industry would copy for the next 15 years. 2009 brought Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which became one of the best-selling games of all time and generated massive revenue for Activision. But months after that successful release, Activision fired Zampella and Jason West in March 2010 while denying them $36 million in bonuses and royalties they'd been expecting. The pair sued Activision for wrongful termination that same week, eventually demanding $1 billion in damages during the years-long legal battle that would drag other former Infinity Ward employees into the fight. Section 3. Respawn Entertainment and Titanfall. April 2010 saw Zampella and West founding Respawn Entertainment just 1 month after Activision fired them, and Electronic Arts signed them for the release of their next game, creating a partnership that would last until Zampella's death 15 years later. Other former Infinity Ward employees joined the lawsuit against Activision, and the settlement negotiations stretched out for years while Zampella tried to build a new studio and create something that could compete with Call of Duty. Activision eventually paid the other ex-IW employees $42 million, and sources reported that West and Zampella received a settlement thought to be in the tens of millions of dollars, validating their claims that Activision had wrongfully terminated them to avoid paying the bonuses they'd earned. Jason West left Respawn in March 2013, leaving Zampella as the sole leader of the studio moving forward, and the reasons for West's departure never got fully explained publicly. March 2014 brought Titanfall, a sci-fi first-person shooter that introduced giant mechs called Titans that players could summon during matches, wall running and parkour movement that made traversal feel fluid and fast, and multiplayer-focused gameplay that tried to do something different than the military shooters Zampella had spent his career making. Critics praised Titanfall as innovative and exciting, with review scores in the 80s and 90s, but the Xbox One and PC exclusivity limited the audience that could play it, and the lack of a single-player campaign meant some players never gave it a chance. October 2016 brought Titanfall 2, which added a critically acclaimed single-player campaign that reviewers called one of the best in any shooter, expanded and refined the multiplayer with new Titan classes and improved mechanics, and released on PlayStation 4 alongside Xbox One and PC to reach a much wider audience. The problem was timing, because Electronic Arts decided to release Titanfall 2 in October 2016, right between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, meaning it got crushed by two massive franchises during the busiest shopping season of the year. Sales disappointed despite the critical acclaim, and Titanfall 2 became one of those games that everyone who played it loved, but not enough people actually bought. The kind of commercial failure that happens when great games get terrible release dates. Section 4. Apex Legends and Star Wars. February 4th, 2019 brought Apex Legends into the world with no advanced marketing, no pre-release hype, just a surprise announcement and immediate availability as a free-to-play battle royale game set in the Titanfall universe. The game hit 50 million players in its first month, becoming one of the fastest-growing games in history. And Zampella had overseen the development of something that finally gave Respawn the massive commercial success that Titanfall never quite achieved. Apex Legends took the movement mechanics from Titanfall and adapted them for battle royale gameplay, introduced character-based abilities with a roster of legends who each had unique tactical and ultimate abilities, and created a ping system that revolutionized team communication by letting players mark enemies and items without voice chat. The free-to-play model with cosmetic microtransactions generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. And as of 2025, the game maintains an active player base in the millions with regular seasonal updates that keep bringing people back. November 2019 brought Star Wars Jedi: Fallen Order, a single-player action-adventure game developed by Respawn under Zampella's leadership that told the story of Cal Kestis, a Jedi Padawan who survived Order 66 and was trying to stay hidden from the Empire. The game combined lightsaber combat with exploration and puzzle solving, drew inspiration from Dark Souls with its challenging combat and respawn mechanics, and received critical acclaim while selling over 10 million copies in its first few months. March 2023 brought Star Wars Jedi: Survivor, the sequel that expanded everything from the first game with larger environments, more complex combat, and a story that continued Cal's journey. And the game sold well despite some technical issues at launch that Respawn eventually patched. November 2017 had brought EA's acquisition of Respawn Entertainment, and Zampella stayed on as studio head while EA integrated the company into their portfolio of developers. January 2020 saw EA announce that Zampella would lead the Los Angeles branch of DICE, the Swedish studio behind the Battlefield franchise, and by 2021, EA had put him in charge of the entire Battlefield franchise after the challenging launch of Battlefield 2042 and the departure of Oscar Gabrielson, who'd been general manager of DICE. DICE LA got renamed to Ripple Effect Studios in July 2021, and under Zampella's oversight, they assisted in the development of Battlefield 6, which became the best-selling game of 2025 in America, according to sales figures. Zampella was simultaneously leading Respawn Entertainment and overseeing the Battlefield franchise, managing multiple studios and multiple massive game development projects. The kind of workload that most people couldn't handle, but he'd been doing for years. Section 5. The Crash. Sunday, December 21, 2025, brought Zampella and an unidentified passenger to Angeles Crest Highway in the San Gabriel Mountains, a scenic winding two-lane road that overlooks both Los Angeles and the San Gabriel Valley. Popular with drivers who want to test their cars on the curves and straightaways that snake through the mountains. Around 12:45 in the afternoon, the 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS came out of a tunnel near mile marker 62 at the west entrance to the Angeles Crest Tunnels, a stretch of Highway 2 where the road transitions from the darkness of the tunnel into bright sunlight with concrete barriers separating the roadway from steep drops on both sides. The Ferrari was traveling southbound when it veered off the road for reasons that California Highway Patrol is still investigating as of December 23rd, with no official determination yet on whether speed, mechanical failure, driver error, or something else caused Zampella to lose control. Video footage obtained by TMZ shows the red Ferrari coming out of the tunnel at what appears to be extremely high speed, the car already skidding as it exits into the daylight before it slams into the concrete barriers between the road's edge and the mountains. Within seconds, a fireball erupts from the mangled wreckage, orange flames shooting into the air as the six-figure mid-engine sports car powered by a hybrid twin-turbo V6 becomes fully engulfed in fire. Witnesses rush toward the crash scene, their voices captured on the video shouting things like, "Oh man, oh shit," as they ran to help. And while TMZ chose not to show certain parts of the footage, the video does show bystanders pulling the passenger away from the burning vehicle. Zampella was trapped inside the driver's seat as the car burned, unable to escape the wreckage, and he was pronounced dead at the scene by first responders who arrived from California Highway Patrol's Altadena area office. The passenger, who'd been ejected on impact, got transported to a hospital where they succumbed to their injuries, and as of December 23rd, their identity hasn't been released to the public pending notification of next of kin. CHP issued a statement explaining that, for unknown reasons, the vehicle veered off the roadway, struck a concrete barrier, and became fully engulfed, adding that it is currently unknown whether alcohol and/or drugs were a factor in this crash, which is standard language investigators use when they haven't completed toxicology tests or finished analyzing all the evidence. The 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS that Zampella was driving represents the bleeding edge of Ferrari's technology. A hybrid supercar that combines a twin turbocharged V6 engine with an electric motor to produce 819 plus horsepower, capable of accelerating from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 3 seconds, and reaching top speeds over 200 miles per hour. The car costs well over $300,000 and features advanced aerodynamics, carbon ceramic brakes, and electronic stability systems designed to keep the car under control even during aggressive driving. But no amount of technology can overcome physics when a car is going too fast on a winding mountain road. Section 6. The immediate aftermath. NBC Los Angeles first reported Zampella's death on Monday, December 22, 2025, confirming that the 55-year-old game developer had been killed in the crash the previous day. Electronic Arts, the Redwood City-based company that owned Respawn Entertainment and employed Zampella as head of both Respawn and Ripple Effect Studios, released a statement on Monday calling his death an unimaginable loss and describing him as a friend, colleague, leader, and visionary creator whose influence on the video game industry was profound and far-reaching. The statement continued by saying his work helped shape modern interactive entertainment and inspired millions of players and developers around the world. His legacy will continue to shape how games are made and how players connect for generations to come. Respawn Entertainment posted on X with a statement that read, "We're heartbroken by the passing of our founder and dear friend Vince Zampella. Vince was a titan and legend of this industry, a visionary leader and a force who shaped teams in games like Call of Duty, Titanfall, Apex Legends, the Star Wars Jedi series, and Battlefield for our community, in ways that will be felt for generations." The statement added that his impact reached far beyond any one game or studio. "We will remember Vince for how he showed up every day, trusting his teams, encouraging bold ideas, and believing in Respawn and Battlefield." Infinity Ward, the studio Zampella co-founded back in 2002 before Activision fired him in 2010, released their own statement honoring him and saying that his legacy of creating iconic, lasting entertainment is immeasurable, while offering condolences to his family and loved ones. Treyarch, another Call of Duty developer, posted, "We're deeply saddened by Vince Zampella's tragic passing, showing how even studios that competed with his work recognized what he'd accomplished." The Twitter accounts for Battlefield, Apex Legends, and various other EA properties posted tributes. And individual developers who'd worked with Zampella over the years shared memories and condolences on social media. Jeff Kiley, host of the Game Awards and a video game journalist who'd known Zampella for years, called him an extraordinary person and a titan of the video game industry, adding that while he created some of the most influential games of our time, I always felt he still had his greatest one ahead of him. JP Kellums, who'd worked with Zampella, tweeted, "In absolute shock right now. Rest in peace to an absolute legend and giant of our industry," attaching a photo of Zampella. The Game Awards official account posted their own tribute saying, "The Game Awards mourns the loss of Vince Zampella, co-creator of Call of Duty and co-founder of Infinity Ward and Respawn Entertainment," acknowledging how foundational his work had been to modern gaming. Section 7. The Legacy. Call of Duty has sold more than 500 million copies across all its entries as of October 2023, making it the third best-selling video game franchise in the world after Mario and Tetris. The series has 100 million monthly active players across all platforms, and since 2022, the franchise has generated more than $30 billion in revenue for Activision. And now Microsoft, which acquired Activision Blizzard in 2023. Modern Warfare, the game that Zampella and Jason West created in 2007, established the template that Call of Duty would follow for nearly 2 decades, introducing the progression systems, kill streaks, and fast-paced multiplayer that became the gold standard for first-person shooters. Titanfall and Titanfall 2 never achieved the commercial success they deserved, but both games are remembered as innovative and influential, introducing movement mechanics and gameplay ideas that other shooters copied. And the devoted fan base that still plays Titanfall 2 in 2025 shows how much people loved what Respawn created. Apex Legends hit 50 million players in its first month, and continues to be one of the most popular battle royale games in the world, generating consistent revenue for EA while maintaining an active competitive scene with tournaments and professional leagues. The Star Wars Jedi games gave single-player action-adventure fans exactly what they wanted with challenging lightsaber combat, exploration, and a story that respected the source material, and both games sold millions of copies while earning critical acclaim. Battlefield 6 became the best-selling game of 2025 in America under Zampella's oversight, proving that even late in his career he still knew how to deliver what players wanted. 3 different times, Zampella revolutionized the first-person shooter genre, first with Medal of Honor, Allied Assault showing what cinematic military shooters could be, then with Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare defining the modern multiplayer shooter, and finally with Titanfall introducing movement mechanics that changed how people thought about player mobility in shooters. Most developers would be lucky to have one game that influences the industry, but Zampella had multiple franchises that fundamentally changed how games get made and played. Section 8. The Unanswered Questions. California Highway Patrol's investigation continues as of December 23, 2025, with no official determination yet on what caused the Ferrari to veer off the road after exiting that tunnel. The video footage shows the car coming out of the tunnel at high speed, already appearing to lose traction before it hits the barrier, and tire marks and skid marks cover the pavement in the aftermath. But whether Zampella was driving recklessly, or whether something mechanical failed, or whether the sun blinded him as he transitioned from the dark tunnel into bright daylight remains unknown. The passenger's identity hasn't been released, and speculation about who was in the car with Zampella serves no purpose until authorities complete their investigation and notify next of kin. Toxicology results will take weeks to process, and CHP's standard language about not knowing whether alcohol or drugs played a role doesn't indicate that investigators suspect intoxication. It just means they're following protocol and not making assumptions before they have laboratory confirmation. The 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS features advanced safety systems and electronic stability control designed to prevent exactly this kind of loss of control. But those systems can only do so much when a car with 819 horsepower is being driven aggressively on a winding mountain road with concrete barriers and steep drops on both sides. Angeles Crest Highway has a reputation among car enthusiasts as a challenging and dangerous road where drivers can test their vehicles on curves and straightaways that demand skill and attention, and crashes happen on that stretch of highway with enough regularity that locals aren't surprised when they hear about another accident. Whether Zampella was familiar with the road, or whether this was his first time driving it, whether he'd driven this specific Ferrari on this road before, or whether he was still learning how the car handled, all of that remains speculation until investigators release their findings. Section 9. The Industry Responds. Gaming publications published obituaries and retrospectives throughout Monday and Tuesday, with writers reflecting on how Zampella's work had shaped their own experiences with games and influenced the entire industry. Reddit threads filled with comments from players sharing memories of the first time they played. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare's multiplayer, or completed Titanfall 2's campaign, or dropped into their first match of Apex Legends, recognizing that none of those experiences would have existed without Zampella's vision and leadership. Current and former Respawn employees shared stories about working with him, describing someone who trusted his teams to do their best work, who encouraged bold ideas even when they seemed risky, and who fought for what he believed was right for the people who worked at his studios and the players who bought their games. The gaming industry lost developers before, but Zampella's death feels different because he was still actively creating, still leading major studios, still overseeing the development of franchises that millions of people play every day. He wasn't retired or working on smaller projects or consulting from the sidelines. He was at the peak of his career managing Respawn Entertainment and the Battlefield franchise, with new games in development that were counting on his guidance and leadership. Apex Legends will continue with seasonal updates because Respawn has teams in place who know what they're doing. The next Star Wars Jedi game was likely in early planning stages, and Battlefield 6's post-launch support will proceed because the development roadmaps were already established. But the question of who replaces Zampella at the head of these studios and franchises, who EA trusts to make the same kinds of decisions he would have made, that's something the company will need to figure out in the coming weeks and months. Section 10. The Personal Side. Vince Zampella was 55 years old when he died, young enough that he should have had another 20 or 30 years to keep creating games and mentoring developers and shaping the industry he'd helped build. Details about his personal life stayed mostly private over the years, with Zampella keeping the focus on his work rather than his life outside the studio. but people who knew him described someone who genuinely loved games and loved the process of making them. The unsuccessful enrollment at Broward College that could have been the end of his story instead became the beginning of a career that took him from answering phones at a local game company to running multiple studios and overseeing some of the biggest franchises in entertainment. The handyman work he did before breaking into the industry, the way he steadily climbed from entry-level positions to director roles to studio founder to industry legend, all of that shows someone who worked for everything he achieved and never took success for granted. The lawsuits with Activision, the tens of millions of dollars in settlements, the decision to start over with Respawn after getting fired from Infinity Ward, all of that demonstrated someone willing to fight for what he believed was right, even when it would have been easier to just walk away. Steven Spielberg trusted him to help design Medal of Honor, Allied Assault. Activision built their most profitable franchise around his vision for Call of Duty. Electronic Arts gave him control over multiple studios and major franchises. And all of that trust came because Zampella consistently delivered games that players loved and that made money while pushing the industry forward creatively. Conclusion. December 23, 2025 finds the gaming industry still processing the loss of someone who fundamentally changed how first-person shooters get made and played, whose work influenced countless other developers, and whose franchises entertained hundreds of millions of players worldwide. The California Highway Patrol investigation continues into what caused that Ferrari to veer off Angeles Crest Highway and crash into the concrete barrier, killing both Vince Zampella and an unidentified passenger whose family is still being notified as of this recording. Video footage captured the moment of impact and the fireball that followed, showing just how quickly everything went wrong and how little time anyone had to react or escape. Electronic Arts will need to figure out who leads Respawn Entertainment and Ripple Effect Studios moving forward, who takes over the Battlefield franchise, who makes the decisions about the next Star Wars Jedi game, and the future of Apex Legends. Those aren't questions that get answered immediately, and EA will probably take their time finding the right people who can honor Zampella's legacy while bringing their own vision to these studios and franchises. Vince Zampella started as someone answering phones at a game company, failed out of college, worked as a handyman, and somehow turned all of that into a career that produced Call of Duty, Titanfall, Apex Legends, and the Star Wars Jedi series. 3 separate times he revolutionized the first-person shooter genre, creating games that defined how millions of people experience interactive entertainment, and his influence will be felt for generations as new developers study what he built and try to create their own innovations. A red Ferrari coming out of a tunnel at high speed, a loss of control that happened in seconds, concrete barriers and flames, and 2 people who didn't make it home that Sunday afternoon in December 2025. The gaming industry lost one of its titans, someone who still had more to create and more to teach and more to accomplish, and all of it ended on a winding mountain road north of Los Angeles. If you want to see more deep dives into gaming industry stories and the people who shape the games you play, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future uploads. Drop a comment sharing your favorite Vince Zampella game or your memories of playing Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare for the first time, or your thoughts on his legacy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.